My life as a devout Muslim and successful businessman was completely shaken when a near-fatal accident led me to a near-death experience. In that moment between worlds, I encountered a divine presence that challenged everything I thought I knew about my faith. For as long as I can remember, Islam was the center of my existence. I grew up in a traditional family in Riyadh, where the 5 daily prayers were as natural as breathing. My father, a stern man respected in the community, always said, "Ahmed, remember, Allah is the only way." I took these words seriously. While building my real estate business empire, I never set aside my devotion. My employees knew that no matter how important a meeting was, it would be interrupted at prayer time. "Mr. Ahmed," my assistant Fatima often said, "the American investor is here for the 2 p.m. meeting." "Allah is more important than any business, Fatima," I would reply with a serene smile. "Tell him I'll be there in 15 minutes after my prayer." I believed that my success in business was a blessing from Allah for my unwavering devotion. My life seemed perfect. A loving wife, 3 obedient children, and a fortune that grew each year. Until that fateful Friday night. I was returning home after prayer at the mosque. Traffic was heavy, and my driver Hassan seemed nervous. "Sir," he said, looking in the rearview mirror, "there's a truck approaching very fast." Before I could respond, I felt a violent impact. The world spun. Glass shattered, and then darkness. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I woke up, I was no longer in the wrecked car. I was floating, observing my own bloodied body being pulled from the wreckage. "This can't be happening," I thought in panic. "Allah, please help me." That's when I saw it. A luminous presence, indescribable in its beauty and power. It wasn't Allah as I had imagined him, nor any representation I had ever seen. The presence spoke, not with words, but directly to my soul. "Ahmed, my son, you have much to learn." Confused and frightened, I asked, "Who are you? Where is Allah?" The answer came as a wave of understanding. "I am what you call Allah, but I am also much more. I am the source of all existence, of all faiths." I was shocked. "But Islam, the Prophet Muhammad, all religions are paths to me, Ahmed. Islam is one of those paths, but not the only one. Love and compassion are the true essence of all faiths." These words shook the foundations of my belief. How could this be true? All my life I believed that Islam was the only true path. The presence continued. "You have been chosen to see beyond the veils of human belief. Use this wisdom with compassion." Before I could ask more questions, I felt a force pulling me back. I heard distant voices, beeping machines. "He's coming back. Doctor, come quickly." I opened my eyes, blinded by the bright hospital light. My wife Amira was holding my hand, tears streaming down her covered face. "Ahmed, thank Allah. We thought we had lost you." I wanted to tell her what I had seen, the revelation I had received, but the words got stuck in my throat. How could I explain something that defied everything we had always believed? The doctor entered smiling. "Mr. Ahmed, you are a very lucky man. It was a miracle you survived." "It wasn't luck, doctor," I said, my voice hoarse. "It was divine intervention." In the days that followed, as I recovered in the hospital, I couldn't stop thinking about my experience, the presence, its words, the feeling of universal love I felt. All of this went against the teachings I had followed all my life. One night, alone in the hospital room, I looked out the window at the illuminated city of Riyadh. The lights of the minarets shone against the dark sky. I always found this view comforting, but now I felt restless. "Allah," I whispered, "or whoever or whatever you are, help me understand. Show me the way." At that moment, I felt a deep peace envelop me. I knew my life would never be the same again. The journey I was about to begin would change not only me but would affect everyone around me. Little did I know that this near-death experience was just the beginning. The real challenge would come when I tried to share these revelations with my family, friends, and community. The battle between the faith I had always known and this new understanding was just beginning, and I was at the center of it. Upon returning to life, I found myself torn between the revelations I had received and the teachings I had always followed. My search for answers distanced me from my community and led me on a spiritual journey through the United States, where I found a small community open to different beliefs. After weeks of recovery in the hospital, I finally returned home. The familiar scent of incense and the soft sound of the adhan echoing through the house should have brought me comfort, but instead, I felt a deep restlessness. My wife Amira noticed my change. One night, as I stared out the window instead of joining the family prayer, she approached me. Ahmed, what's going on? You haven't been the same since the accident. I took a deep breath, seeking courage. Amira, I saw something when I was near death, something that changed everything. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? I saw a presence. It wasn't Allah as we've always imagined. It was different, universal. Amira recoiled, shocked. Astaghfirullah, Ahmed, this is blasphemy. No, Amira, you don't understand. It was real. It was... She raised her hand, interrupting me. Say no more. You're confused from the trauma. Let's pray together. It will help. But it didn't help. Every time I knelt to pray, the words seemed empty. The presence I had encountered seemed so distant from the rigid structures of Islam I had always known. Desperate for answers, I sought out the imam of our local mosque. Imam Abdullah, I said after explaining my experience. What does this mean? How can I reconcile what I saw with our faith? The imam frowned, his expression a mixture of concern and disapproval. Ahmed, my son, these visions are temptations from Shaitan. He tests our faith with illusions. But it didn't feel like an illusion, Imam. It felt more real than anything I've ever experienced. The mind can deceive us, Ahmed. Stay true to the teachings of the Prophet. This is the only truth. I left the mosque more confused than when I entered. The Imam's words, which would have once been a beacon of guidance, now seemed insufficient. In the months that followed, my search for answers began to affect my business and relationships. Colleagues and friends started to avoid me. I heard whispers in the mosque. Have you heard about Ahmed? They say he's questioning the teachings. May Allah guide him back to the right path. The loneliness was overwhelming. Not even Amira seemed to understand me anymore. One night, after another heated discussion, she said something that changed everything. If you can't find peace here, maybe you should look elsewhere. Those words, though spoken in anger, planted a seed in my mind. What if the answer wasn't here in Riyadh? What if I needed to go beyond to understand? Weeks later, I was on a plane to the United States. Amira and the children stayed behind, with the promise that I would return when I found the answers I was seeking. My journey took me through various American cities. I visited mosques, churches, synagogues, and Buddhist temples. Each place offered glimpses of the universal truth I had experienced, but none seemed to capture it completely. It was at a small spiritual retreat in Arizona that I finally found something close to what I was seeking. The Spiritual Harmony Center was a place where people of diverse beliefs gathered to meditate, discuss, and seek a deeper understanding of spirituality. Sarah, one of the center's leaders, greeted me with a warm smile. Welcome, Ahmed. What brings you to us? I told my story, expecting the usual skepticism. Instead, Sarah nodded understandingly. Many here have had similar experiences, Ahmed. Experiences that challenge the boundaries of our individual beliefs. For the first time in months, I felt I could breathe freely. How do you deal with it? How do you reconcile these experiences with your faiths? Sarah smiled. We don't reconcile. We expand. You see, true spirituality isn't confined to a single set of beliefs. It's something bigger, more inclusive. In the days that followed, I participated in meditations, discussion groups, and silent retreats. I met former Catholics, Buddhists, Hindus, and yes, even other Muslims who had gone through journeys similar to mine. One evening, during a sharing session, a man named Michael, a former pastor, said something that resonated deeply with me. True faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about being open to the questions and embracing the mystery of the divine in all its forms. These words were like a balm to my restless soul. I realized that my near-death experience wasn't a denial of my Islamic faith, but an invitation to expand my understanding of the divine. As days turned into weeks, I felt a transformation occurring within me. The rigid structure of beliefs I had built over a lifetime began to dissolve, giving way to something more fluid, more inclusive. Before leaving the center, I had one last conversation with Sarah. What do I do now? I asked. How do I go back to my life, my community with all of this? Sarah placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. Ahmed, your journey is just beginning. Take what you've learned here with you, but remember, the real challenge isn't finding the truth, but living in accordance with it. With a full heart and an open mind, I boarded the flight back to Riyadh. I knew I would face challenges in trying to integrate my new understanding into my old life, but for the first time since the accident, I felt truly at peace. The Riyadh skyline appeared through the plane window, the familiar minarets rising against the desert sky. I took a deep breath, preparing myself for what was to come. My journey of spiritual rediscovery was far from over, but now I had the tools to navigate it with grace and compassion. As I struggled to reconcile my new understanding with my previous faith, I realized that my experience was a call to rethink spirituality. I decided to embrace a more compassionate and inclusive view of faith, even if it meant facing disapproval from my original community. Returning to Riyadh was like plunging into a familiar world, but now seen through a completely new lens. The streets, the sounds, the smells, everything was the same, but I had changed profoundly. My family welcomed me with a mixture of joy and apprehension. Amira, my wife, was the first to notice the change. "Ahmed," she said on our first night together, "your eyes, there's something different about them." I smiled, knowing that the journey ahead would be challenging. "Amira, my love, I have so much to tell you." In the weeks that followed, I tried with all the patience I could muster to share my experiences and new understandings with Amira and our children. The reactions ranged from cautious curiosity to open shock. One night during dinner, my oldest son, Khalid, couldn't contain his frustration. "Father, what are you saying? That all religions are equal? That Islam is not the only true path?" I took a deep breath, searching for the right words. "Khalid, what I'm saying is that love and compassion are at the core of all true faiths. Islam teaches us this, but other religions also have this same essence. But the Quran teaches us to be compassionate, to seek knowledge, to respect others. I'm not denying our faith, I'm proposing that we see it in a broader and more inclusive way." Amira, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "Ahmed, I understand that you went through something profound, but this is dangerous. What will the community think?" Her concern was valid. I could already feel the stares and whispers when I went to the mosque. Imam Abdullah, once my trusted advisor, now barely greeted me. I decided it was time to act. If I wanted to live according to my new understanding, I needed to be brave and set an example. I started organizing small discussion groups in my home. At first, it was just a few close friends and curious business colleagues. I shared my experiences and invited them to reflect on their own beliefs. "Think," I would say, "if Allah is truly merciful and compassionate as we are taught, wouldn't it make sense that He loves all His creations, regardless of how they call Him or worship Him?" The reactions were mixed. Some were intrigued, asking questions and sharing their own hidden doubts. Others were visibly uncomfortable, changing the subject or finding excuses to leave early. One day I received an unexpected visit. It was Fatima, my former assistant whom I hadn't seen since I stepped away from business. "Mr. Ahmed," she said nervously, "I heard about your new ideas. I have some questions if you don't mind." I spent hours talking with Fatima, answering her questions and sharing my reflections. In the end, I saw tears in her eyes. "All my life," she said, "I felt there was something more, something beyond what we were taught, but I was always afraid to question. Thank you for showing me I'm not alone." Moments like these gave me strength to continue, even as criticism intensified. I received veiled threats, lost business contracts, and saw old friends drift away. The turning point came when I was summoned to a meeting with the mosque council. Imam Abdullah led the group, his face a mask of disapproval. "Ahmed," he began, "you have always been a pillar of our community, but these ideas you're spreading, they're dangerous. They're leading people away from the true path." I met his gaze, feeling a calmness that came from a deep certainty. "Imam, with all due respect, I'm not leading anyone away from the path. I'm inviting people to see that the path is broader and more inclusive than we thought." "This is heresy," exclaimed one of the council members. "It's love," I replied simply. "Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, taught us to love everyone, not just those who think like us." The meeting ended in a tense stalemate. I was warned to reconsider my positions or face possible consequences. Leaving the mosque that night, I felt the weight of the decision I was about to make. Continuing on this path would possibly mean losing my position in the community, facing ostracism, and perhaps even more serious threats. But then I remembered the presence I encountered during my near-death experience, the universal love I felt. I remembered Sarah's words at the spiritual center in the U.S. and the tears in Fatima's eyes. At that moment, under the starry sky of Riyadh, I made my decision. I would continue to share my message of love and inclusion, no matter the cost. If it meant rethinking and reformulating my own spirituality, then so be it. Allah, I whispered into the night. Guide me on this path. May I be an instrument of your universal love. With firm steps, I walked home, knowing that the real work was just beginning. I was ready to embrace a more compassionate and inclusive faith, even if it meant swimming against the current of everything I knew before. Determined to share my new perspective, I organized a meeting in my hometown. I faced skepticism and severe criticism, but also found unexpected support. It was at this moment that I realized my mission was greater than I had imagined. It was about uniting people of different beliefs through love and compassion. The weeks following my decision were intense. Amira, although still hesitant, decided to support me. I don't completely understand, Ahmed, she said one night, but I see the peace in your eyes. If this is what Allah wants for you, then I'll stand by your side. Her support gave me the courage I needed to take the next step. I decided to organize a large meeting, open to everyone in the community, to share my experience and my new vision of faith. I rented a hall in the city center and spread invitations. The news spread quickly, generating a mix of curiosity and controversy. On the night of the event, the hall was packed. Familiar faces and strangers mingled in the crowd. I saw Imam Abdullah sitting in the front row, his face a mask of disapproval. But I also saw Fatima, my former assistant, smiling encouragingly. With a deep sigh, I took the stage. Assalamu alaikum, I began. I thank you all for coming tonight. I know many of you have questions, perhaps even concerns about what I've been talking about recently. I'm here to share my journey with you, in the hope that we can open a dialogue about the true meaning of faith. I began to tell my story, the accident, the near-death experience, my journey in the U.S. As I spoke, I could see the varied reactions in the audience. Some nodded in understanding, others frowned in confusion or disapproval. What I discovered, I concluded, is that love and compassion are the essence of all true religions. Allah, in His infinite wisdom, created many paths to reach Him. The silence that followed was broken by Imam Abdullah's voice. "This is blasphemy," he exclaimed, standing up. "You are denying the truth of Islam, the final word of Allah." I took a deep breath, seeking calm. "Imam, with all due respect, I'm not denying anything. I'm proposing that we expand our understanding. The Quran teaches us about mercy and compassion. Shouldn't we extend this to all of Allah's children regardless of their faith?" A woman in the audience stood up. I recognized her as Aisha, a local teacher. "But Ahmed, if we accept that all religions are valid, what happens to our Muslim identity? Our identity, Aisha, is not in the clothes we wear or the rituals we practice, but in the love we have in our hearts," I replied. "We can be proudly Muslim and still respect and learn from other faiths." Suddenly, an unexpected voice joined the discussion. It was Yusuf, a young man I knew to be known for his conservative views. I had a dream," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I saw a light like the one Ahmed described, and I felt a love that went beyond anything I've ever experienced. Maybe there's something to what he's saying." The hall erupted in murmurs. I saw Imam Abdullah look at Yusuf with a mixture of shock and concern. I seized the moment to continue. "Friends, I'm not asking you to abandon your beliefs. I'm inviting all of us to expand our understanding, to see the beauty in other faiths, to recognize that Allah's love is big enough to encompass all of humanity." The following hours were intense. Questions, debates, and even some heated accusations were thrown. But to my surprise, there were also moments of mutual understanding and deep reflection. A young woman, wearing a colorful hijab, approached me after the meeting. "Mr. Ahmed, your words, they resonated with me. I've always felt torn between my faith and my desire to connect with people of other religions. You've given me hope that I can do both." As people left the hall, I noticed small groups forming, engaged in animated discussions. Some seemed agitated, others inspired, but everyone was thinking, questioning, reflecting. Amira, who had remained silent throughout the event, finally approached me. "Ahmed," she said, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and concern, "you've opened a door that can't be closed. What happens now?" I looked around, seeing the faces of my neighbors, friends, and even strangers, all processing what they had heard. "Now, my love," I replied, "we begin the real work. Building bridges, not walls. Uniting, not dividing. This is the true essence of faith that was revealed to me." At that moment, surrounded by the buzz of voices and the whirlwind of emotions, I realized that my mission was much greater than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just about sharing my personal experience. but about initiating a movement of understanding and love among different beliefs. The path ahead would be challenging, full of obstacles and resistance, but it would also be filled with opportunities for growth, understanding, and above all, love. And I was ready to lead this path, one step at a time, with an open heart and renewed faith. Today I lead a spiritual support center that unites people from diverse religious backgrounds. My journey, which began with a near-fatal accident, has transformed into a movement of healing and spiritual unity. I finally understood that the true purpose of faith goes beyond doctrines and rules. It's about promoting love, compassion, and peace among all human beings. The months following the public meeting were a roller coaster of emotions and events. While some community members distanced themselves, others drew closer, curious and thirsty for a new spiritual perspective. It was during this tumultuous period that the idea of the Spiritual Support Center began to take shape. Amira, who initially had her reservations, became my greatest ally in this project. "Ahmed," she told me one night as we were planning, "do you really think Riyadh is ready for something like this?" I took her hand, feeling the mixture of hope and apprehension in her voice. "Maybe it's not completely ready, my love, but that's precisely why we need to do this. Someone needs to take the first step." With the help of Fatima, my former assistant who became a fervent supporter, we found a suitable building on the outskirts of the city. It was a modest location, but with the potential to become a sanctuary of peace and understanding. On the day of the inauguration, I was surprised by the diversity of people who showed up. Muslims, of course, but also Christians, Hindus, and even some who identified as atheists or agnostics. Yusuf, the young man who had spoken in my defense at the public meeting, was among the first to arrive. "Mr. Ahmed," he said with a shy smile, "since that night I haven't been able to stop thinking about what you said. I'm here to learn more." As more people arrived, I could feel the energy of the place transform. It was a mixture of curiosity, hope, and yes, a little apprehension. I decided to start with a brief introduction. "Welcome, friends. This center is not a mosque, nor a church, nor a temple. It's a place where all faiths and beliefs are respected and celebrated. Here we seek to understand each other, not to convert or judge. Our only rule is mutual respect and openness to learn." The first weeks were challenging. We had to navigate cultural differences, misunderstandings, and occasionally open conflicts. But with each obstacle overcome, our community grew stronger. One day, during an interfaith meditation session, a Christian woman named Maria raised a question that captured the essence of what we were trying to achieve. "Ahmed, how can we maintain our own beliefs while embracing those of others? Sometimes I feel like I'm betraying my faith by accepting other perspectives." I reflected for a moment before answering. "Maria, think of your faith as a house. By learning about other beliefs, you're not demolishing your house. You're adding windows, allowing more light to enter. Your foundation remains the same, but your view of the world expands." This metaphor resonated not only with Maria, but with many others. We began to see remarkable transformations in our members. People who before barely looked at each other in the streets now shared meals and personal stories. Aisha, the teacher who had questioned Muslim identity at the public meeting, became one of the most active participants in the center. One day she sought me out with tears in her eyes. "Ahmed, I need to tell you something. Yesterday, one of my students, a Hindu girl, was being bullied at school. Before I might have stayed silent, but after everything I've learned here, I intervened. I explained to the class about the beauty of all religions and how mutual respect is fundamental. It was a transformative moment. Stories like this began to multiply. The center became a catalyst for changes not only in our personal lives but in the community as a whole. Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. We faced resistance, sometimes even threats. Imam Abdullah, in particular, remained a vocal critic. "You're diluting our faith, Ahmed," he accused me during a tense encounter. "You're leading people away from the true path." I took a deep breath before responding. "Imam, with all due respect, I'm not diluting anything. I'm showing people that Allah's love is vast enough to encompass all of humanity. We're not losing our faith, we're expanding our compassion." Over the months, even some of the most fervent critics began to show curiosity. We received visits from religious leaders of various denominations, some skeptical, others open to dialogue. A visiting rabbi, after participating in one of our comparative sacred text study sessions, commented, "It's fascinating to see how our scriptures, though different, share so many fundamental values. Perhaps we have more in common than we thought." As our reputation grew, we began to receive requests from other cities and even other countries to help establish similar centers. It was a clear sign that we had touched on something fundamental, a deep need for connection and understanding that transcended geographical and cultural boundaries. Reflecting on all this one night, I shared my thoughts with Amira. When I had that near-death experience, I could never have imagined where it would lead me. Now I see it was just the beginning. The real miracle wasn't surviving the accident, but what was born from that survival. Amira smiled, her eyes shining with understanding and love. You're right, Ahmed. And to think it all started with a search for answers, and now we're helping others find theirs. Looking to the future, I know there is still much work to be done. The path to true understanding and mutual acceptance is long and often difficult, but each life touched, each barrier broken down, each connection made between people of different backgrounds, reminds me of the transformative power of love and compassion. The center that began as a dream has become a beacon of hope, not just for our community, but as a model of what is possible when we open our hearts and minds. It is living proof that when we focus on what unites us instead of what divides us, we can create a more compassionate and harmonious world. And so I continue my journey, no longer alone but accompanied by a growing community of souls seeking a deeper and more inclusive spirituality. Together, we are rediscovering the true purpose of faith, not as a rigid set of rules, but as a path to universal love and mutual understanding.